Comprehensive planning for student success. Self-determination, Module 2, Lesson 3. Well, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about what are some ways to support growth in student self-determination. Research by Waymire and Schwartz in 1997 indicated that self-determined individuals experience better outcomes after graduation in high school. On the contrary, youth with lower self-determination are less likely to enroll in post-secondary programs than peers in the general population and are less likely than their general population peers to be employed after leaving school. Self-determination is the ability and opportunity to make meaningful choices to control one's life based on knowing oneself in the pursuit of needs, interests, and values. The essential characteristics of self-determination include psychological empowerment, autonomy, self-realization, and self-regulation. These abilities require a supportive environment in which educators play a significant role. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 4 ways to support self-determination. Let's start with instructional strategies. Modeling is an instructional strategy in which a demonstration of a new skill or concept or approach is observed by a student to learn. Modeling can be used to teach self-determination skills. Students can learn and develop thinking skills and thought processes when they receive a model of a think aloud. In a think aloud, someone models the metacognitive process or thought process that goes into completing a task or activity. We can assume that all students intuitively self-instruct or self-encourage themselves when things get tough. By saying out loud the productive thoughts during a process, students are afforded a model of how to think the task through. Basically, modeling occurs when someone, a teacher or student, demonstrates a task students will be expected to do on their own. This instruction engages students' imitation of particular behaviors to encourage learning, including mentors or collaborative learning supports for teaching self-determination. And this idea of using modeling as an instructional strategy can be quite useful. Opportunities for choice occur when students are given opportunities to choose things like instructional activities or partners or schedules. Students should be given a number of options of which their preferences are included. I mean, I really despise pickled beets and sauerkraut. If these were my only choices for dinner, I wouldn't be very encouraged by that opportunity. So don't try to pull a fast one and give the student 2 unpreferred choices and call it a day and say you gave them choice. Giving students opportunities to make choices allows them to demonstrate control and responsibility in the classroom and other environments. So you want to make sure they're reinforced by the outcome of their choice. And even better, you want to give students a chance to reflect on those choices so they can practice self-evaluating those choices and they can make better decisions in the future. By allowing students opportunities to engage in choice making, they become more aware of their preferences. They appreciate that choices are possible. They'll recognize future opportunities to choose, they generate alternative choices, and they can evaluate those alternatives. They can select alternatives best to fit their goals. Now, attribution training, well, think about it. When you achieve something, what do you attribute that success to? I bet you think, well, I attribute my success because I tried or I put my full effort into it. What if you didn't do something so well? I imagine you might think that you just need to try something different or remove whatever barrier was in the way so you can be more successful next time. These are the noted attributions of overall successful people. They're productive attributions. As it turns out, people who are less self-determined or are students with disabilities tend to attribute failure or success to inability or luck, respectively. So if you thought every time you were successful that it was just luck, you wouldn't necessarily try to continue to use that tactic or really evaluate your choices or what you did. We want to train students to determine the environmental or ability barriers and to plan to overcome them. And additionally, let's go back to the modeling I spoke of a minute ago. This is how think alouds are modeled in a model for improving attribution. Here's an example of a think aloud script. So the teacher says, over the next few weeks, on some mornings, we'll have an activity to start off the day. The purpose will be to learn how to be better workers. We all know it's important to try one's best, but the secret is to know how to say the right things to yourself, especially when you're right in the middle of a difficult job. It's certainly not easy to change how we think, but we can practice and we can do it. Now let's start an exercise. The teacher would try an item and model an effort statement such as, I'm going to try this even if it's hard. And then she says, I want you to try and think out loud as you go along. Listen to each other's thoughts about how you try your best. And then the teacher would reinforce self-statements as students try items, summarizing statements after students complete the task. That's an example of modeling think aloud lesson. For students with limited to no imitation skills, behavioral strategies should be implemented to support development of those skills, along with student initiating. These skills are part of being self-determined. Use reinforcement for positive behaviors, even if they are an approximation of the behavior you're actually looking for. Use physical prompts to ensure student success. The important thing about behavioral strategies or using reinforcement and prompting is that you also use naturally occurring reinforcers. Students with all contrived reinforcers will make slower progress. Who knows how the use of self-management as an intervention got started? Well, it all started with an intervention to help people stop smoking. To collect baseline data, researchers asked individuals to count the number of cigarettes they smoked. They were going to collect that data and use it to compare the smoking after intervention. But what they found was that people in the study who were just collecting their baseline data began decreasing cigarettes during that baseline phase without any intervention. To learn more about practical implementation of self-management programs, you might refer to the King, Sears, and Carpenter 1998 manual. It's my favorite even after all these years. But self-management, through cognitive strategy approach, students are taught self-monitoring, which is a strategy that requires the students to determine whether a target behavior has occurred and then record its occurrence. Self-evaluation, a strategy that asks the students to compare his or her behavior to some criteria and make judgment about the quality of the behavior being exhibited. Self-instruction, a method by which students can talk to themselves with verbal prompts to solve an academic or social problem. Think attribution training. And self-reinforcement. The student rewards him or herself with a token or a tally after meeting some performance standard. The purpose of these strategies is to increase the student's awareness and competence in recognizing and eliminating negative behaviors. Now, the next intervention I want to show you is called Self-Determined Learning Model of Instruction, or SDLMI. Let's take a look at this resource. What's great about SDLMI is that it brings it all together. You make choices and decisions, develop action plans for academic goals or any goal, and self-monitor and self-evaluate progress toward those goals. SDLMI is really a goal setting and attainment framework. Before beginning the SDLMI three-phase process, it is important to sit down with students and have preliminary discussions. These discussions initially will cover the concept of self-determination and elicit student connections and backgrounds by discussing how the students may currently be engaging in self-determination or has seen self-determined behavior in his or her life. Next, the student and teacher will discuss the SDLMI and phases involved in the process. In this conversation, the importance and benefits of the SDLMI process are discussed, and any more terminology needed will be explained. Ultimately, SDLMI is for any adolescent who needs to develop self-determination. The teacher, as facilitator, has to find the balance between the student's level of competence in self-determination, or the starting point, and the structure, the environment to balance that with support so that the student can be successful in attaining and evaluating the goals, continually growing in independence. Student goals might be related to any area of the student's life that a goal needs to be worked toward. Initially, you might want to facilitate the student working through the process on a goal that attainment comes with a lot of rewards. Perhaps the student wants to save money to get a new video game, but there's a process and some activities and some follow-through to get there. A teacher could facilitate this process through SDLMI, and the student would be able to evaluate the attainment of that goal and see that the process works and that there's reinforcement after for those behaviors. A teacher could also facilitate this process with an entire class. It's been done in research where teachers used SDLMI with entire math classes. Then students work toward individualized academic goals and take the steps that they personally need to reach their personal goals. And once the student is more proficient in the process and the environment is set up well, the student can then proceed to create those transition IEP goals and self-manage the progress throughout the year. So teachers use SDLMI to teach students to learn and use self-regulated problem-solving processes that involve students answering a set of questions that guide them to set a goal, create a plan to achieve that goal, and monitor and self-evaluate progress toward that goal, altering the plan or goal as needed. So in this lesson, I'm providing you with an article that summarizes the process. This will help you understand the background and purpose and benefits of SDLMI. I'm also going to provide you with the actual SDLMI manual. This manual gives facilitators the information, talking points, and handouts to run the program. One thing I want everyone to remember and realize is that SDLMI is set up to be a student activity. All facilitation by the teacher is in the wording of the student's perspective. For example, you wouldn't sit down with a student and say, "What is your goal?" Instead, you would word it as, "Amy, how would you answer the question, what do I want to learn?" So it's all in first person toward the student. You want to support the student to answer the student questions and keep the focus on the student and his or her part in the process. So what is the teacher's role? The teacher is facilitator, enabling the student to succeed and giving support, but not the authority. The teacher is the instructor to help the student work through the questions and provide instruction that enables the student to answer those questions. And the teacher is an advocate. And you communicate as a teacher that you believe the student can be successful. The manual gives great guidance on the teacher's role and how to put that role into place. When the student receives instruction using SDLMI, they take on several roles. They are a self-directed learner. But not all students can perform all activities independently, but all students can be supported to be actively engaged in the process, and in doing so, are more actively, directly learning. And the student is an active learner. So try to act in collaboration, assuming some direction over the learning process. The level of supports needed by students to self-direct learning will vary considerably, but all students can be actively engaged in the learning process with supports provided in the SDLMI. So you're probably wondering, what would be a reasonable short-term goal? Here we have a list of a number of examples. A student may want to learn about upcoming assignments in a class. or how to get a schedule for the football season, or perhaps get into a school club. Maybe the student just wants to be able to check out a book from the library, or learn how to email, or use the public library. And maybe the student wants to figure out how to go to the movies independently. It's really up to the individual student. I can also show you here some of the forms that come in the manual. So phase 1 is set a goal. So these questions, as you can see, they're student focused. What do I want to learn or improve in English and math class? What do I know about it now? What must change from, what do I need to learn? And then how do I make this happen? Phase 2 is taking the action. So now that I've kind of worked through what it is, I know I need to figure out what I need to learn and what could be my barriers. And then the last phase is adjusting the goal or plan. So after you take the steps of phase 2, the student sits down and thinks about, what have I done? And then what's changed? And what do I need to do now? And lastly, I want to show you a great resource. I mean, this is the end-all be-all, really, in terms of trying to teach and support self-determination. If you do anything, know your way around the I'm Determined website. So the first thing that you're going to want to look at are the quick links. And the 3 things that can really help you in teaching self-determination is the one-pager, the good day plan, and the goal plan. Each of these has all of the resources you need to get going on it. So let's start with the one-pager. The one-pager is a great activity for a student to get to know about him or herself. If you remember, self-determination is about being able to make choices and decisions based on an understanding of yourself. So additionally, you're going to notice these are very similar to the kind of questions that a student has to participate in the transition meeting. So here, the information will tell you what it is, what it does, and how to do it. Another thing to note is that all of this has templates, but it also has apps that students can use technology to put icons and online pictures or draw pictures and use technology. Or you can just use the old-fashioned paper. All right, so here we have examples of one-pagers at different levels. So whatever grade you teach, you can see how it's done. Here you have your template, your implementation guide with examples, and other versions. How to download that web app I was telling you about, and any resources here and different grade levels. So you can also go to quick links and see about the good day plan. The student can kind of be self-determined about the choices they make through the day that makes it for a good day for them. And then a goal plan is a way for students to start with goal setting. So I really encourage you to look here at the I'mDetermined.org website and go to those quick links. And if you want to start something tomorrow, this is the place to get going on that. All right, and here are your resources. I do really appreciate your time and attention here on this module covering self-determination. I look forward to having you participate in the next part, which is covering the student-led IEP and transition plan.